preparing for disaster is nothing new in Florida when it comes to hurricanes, but what happens when your city faces historic amounts of rainfall in a 12-hour period from a freak rainstorm? Next up on Today in Tech, we're going to talk about how the city not only responded to restore its communication systems, but also used the disaster as an opportunity to accelerate its modernization efforts. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Tamika McKay. She is the CIO of the city of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Welcome to the show, Tamika.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this happened in April, and I was looking this up on the internet, and it said in Fort Lauderdale and the surrounding areas on April 12th, 2023, this rainstorm, you got reported 25.6 inches of rain within approximately 12 hours. Is that about the numbers that you guys are hearing?
Yeah, it was actually 5 hours.
Oh, it was that much within 5 hours?
Within 5 hours. It was a flash flood, and it was a 1 in a 1,000 year storm.
Wow. And I want to talk about the storm, but I'm going to bring you back even further back in time just for a second. You were named CIO of the city last August, right? So you've now been in the role for just a little bit over a year. But at the time in April, you had only been on the job for like 7 or 8 months, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And so when you came in, you had this plan for digitizing and modernizing your city's technology systems, right? So discuss kind of what you were doing before the storm hit. What was the big plan?
Sure, absolutely. When I started, I developed this 3 to 5 year plan. After doing an assessment and scanning the environment, it was clear that most of the challenges we were facing fell under 3 categories: cybersecurity, modernization or digital transformation, depending on your flavor, and human capital. And what I did was I created a matrix, and in that matrix, there were emergency items, things that needed to be handled immediately, and urgent, and then important. And in that plan, I talked about collapsing some of the older, outdated data centers, consolidating them into 2, beefing those up, modernizing some of the legacy apps, putting them in the cloud, reducing all of the technical debt, which was an enormous amount of technical debt at that time, modernizing the backup and disaster recovery strategy. And obviously can't drain the ocean, but with budgetary and resource considerations, my goal was to do that in 3 to 5 years.
Right.
And then Mother Nature.
So it sounded like, okay, this is great. This is what most CIOs do, and you're rolling along. You understand that there's a 3-year process, and then boom, this thing hits, right?
Yeah.
So how much of this were you able to implement any of this plan before this flooding happened, or was it basically like, oh, now we've got to do something else, or we've got to go into disaster mode?
Well, we were in the middle of a couple of projects. As I said, we were trying to deal with the most urgent ones first. Obviously, known cybersecurity vulnerabilities. We were in the process of that. We're in the process of upgrading some of the technology infrastructure, which was considerably aged. And we were starting just with our storage. And we were also in the process of shopping, if you will, for an ITSM tool replacement, as well as our backup and disaster modernization and standardization plan. So to answer your question, we were in the middle of some of those projects, and some of them hadn't even started. Yeah. And I guess that the most critical one was the data center consolidation. That wasn't even going to be in the plan for at least another year. Okay. So take me through the day of the storm, because did this happen overnight, or did this happen in the day? Like, take us through your day as far as you can recall what happened. Yeah. Well, April 12th, it started out as a regular day, came to work, everything's hustling, bustling. It was a rainy day. And normally, I would leave the office. I actually had an online class that night. And the class started at 6:30. So normally I would leave the office about 5 to get home by 6, have dinner, and be ready for my online class. And it was about 5:30, and I saw the rain. I said, you know what? If I leave now, I'm going to be stuck in traffic, because traffic moves slower when it's raining. Right. And that was a bad decision because by 8 o'clock, maybe by 7:30, 8 o'clock, I drive a 4Runner and the water was up to my wheel well.
Yeah.
The parking lot was completely flooded and we couldn't even exit the building. At that time, it was just myself, the security guard, and our attorney. He walked out and he came back in. His car was covered. He had a BMW, shorter. So his car was inaccessible. So we came back in. We sat down. We said, okay, we'll wait and see if the storm will pass over. It never stopped.
Yeah.
It just kept raining and raining and raining and raining and raining. And I'd say maybe about 8:45, 9 o'clock, I got the call from our emergency management chief letting us know that we were going to stand up the emergency operations center, which was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
But then when I looked outside at that time, the city was literally inundated. We had over 600 calls. We had rescued folks. We couldn't even get some of them through the door. They had to be pulled out through the window. We had to reach out to other agencies. Luckily for us, it was centralized for Lauderdale. Had this been a larger disaster, we would not have been able to reach out to some of our colleagues nearby. And I think probably within a 24-hour period, it was declared a disaster. And you've probably seen some of the pictures. I mean, there were cars just left in the street.
Right.
People couldn't even drive. It looked like something out of one of those end of the world movies.
Now, at some point, like when you got that call, did you start to realize that this was now a emergency response system rather than just a heavy rainstorm, and that certain things within your purview were then going to be affected or did get affected? Was that going through your mind?
At the time that I got the call, I just thought it would be a flooding event.
Yeah.
But when I started realizing that some things were getting bad was when we lost power to the building. So I happened to be standing in front of the building, and I actually called my husband at that time and asked him to come pick me up because I couldn't get to my car.
Yeah.
And while I was waiting for him, what normally would take maybe 20-minute drive, it took him an hour and a half to get here. So while I was waiting for him, I could see the water rising. You couldn't see the street anymore. You couldn't see the parking lot. And then I don't know what the exact cause was, but we heard this loud bang. And I later found out that was our generator. So the building lost power.
Okay.
Right. And I couldn't, at that time we were standing in front of the building. So because the building lost power, we couldn't get back in the building because all of our door access is run by a computer system.
Yeah.
So now stuck in front of the city hall, water's rising.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get people on the phone to get them at the ELC to activate the ELC. Most of the people that are west can't get back east because the water is flooded. We happen to have one of our team members had a amphibious vehicle, and he was able to drive to the ELC where they were just starting to set up. And everything literally happened minute by minute by minute by minute by minute. Yeah. Probably about midnight, we were in full ELC mode, and people were just, calling for help.
Yeah. Did you
at that time, the building, even though we lost power in the building, I wasn't that concerned because I knew we had a generator. But at the time, I didn't know it. That loud sound that I heard, the generator was also not working.
Right.
So probably by that next morning, we realized that we were completely dead. Yep. There was no power to the city hall whatsoever.
Okay. Now, were the data centers that you had? You said you had a bunch of different systems in different locations, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And one of our main data centers was the city hall. So a good portion of all of our services were no longer operational. Does
that have redundant backup so that you could still save all the data and as part of a disaster recovery plan or a backup system?
Right. So we had a generator and we had a UPS.
Yep.
Once the generator died, The UPS ran as long as it could. I believe it ran for maybe about 6 hours, and then it died.
Okay.
So everything in the data center did a hard shutdown, which is not good for computer equipment. But now remember, ignorance is bliss, because I'm not knowing this at this time. I'm thinking, oh yeah, my generator's going and my UPS is going. I didn't find out till the next morning that everything was dead.
Okay.
And that's when we started scrambling around. At that point, realizing, okay, this is not just a storm. This is a serious event. And, obviously life and safety is the first concern. And then after that, it's how do we recover? How do we get back online? And believe it or not, some of our systems that our residents would rely on to get help were no longer available. That's when it really hits you. Did you lose any emergency communication systems, or were those safe and up and running? No, we didn't lose any emergency communication system. Okay. Those are on our radio system, which is run out of our police department. And they never lost power, luckily. Okay. So radio communications was fine, but email communications we lost, which was a significant challenge, because now our city manager and some of our community services professionals had to set up Gmails just to communicate with people, because we had no Fort Lauderdale email. And our city manager had to set up a Gmail account just to communicate with the governor and the state to get help for our residents. So it was definitely lessons learned. And you may take a lot of things for granted when it comes to technology and communications. And we think about cybersecurity, we think about ransomware and so forth. But who would think of a 1,000-year flood where not only did you lose power to your building, you lost your generator, and all of your systems that were relying on this core critical site now are dead in the water.
Now, obviously, being in Florida, you have preparations and plans for hurricanes. Being in Florida, but those are usually have like 5 to 6 days of time.
By that time, we've already backed everything up. We've already, put a plastic on the computers. We've already gone through our checklist. Okay, who's on shift 1? Who's on shift? We had none of that as a luxury. This time. And it really kind of makes you rethink your whole emergency management incident response plan. What do you do when there is no 12-hour or 8-hour notice?
Did you stick to that incident response plan, or did you find yourself improvising and prioritizing and calling audibles as they would in a football game?
I would say for that first 24 hours, we were improvising and calling audibles. I don't think we actually got ourselves to a place where we could pull out that emergency response plan till probably about 48 hours in. And at that time, it was just, okay, we have access to nothing. What do we need to do? Now, we do back up to our emergency operations center. And the thought was, hey, if we could get power to our City Hall data center, even if it's just for a few hours, we could virtually migrate everything over. But we weren't able to get power to the building for probably 2 to 3 days.
So what were the priorities that were given to you as the CIO, or that you probably had a list of requests from a lot of different departments about get me back up or put me back up on the list, or and so how did you prioritize?
Well, I think our main priority was communication. And that was a combination of network connectivity as well as email. We were able to reroute some of the network connectivity from that single building, City Hall, to our emergency operations center. And we slowly but surely started bringing things back up. And I really want to give a shout out to my network team, because they literally redesigned our network in like a 48-hour period, something that would normally take, meetings and plans and diagrams. And they literally just got in, okay, we need to move this over here. We need this over here. And we got network connectivity. They used some dark fiber, and they got everything, or at least network connectivity up and running for most of the buildings that have been down. Now, email, on the other hand, we had some challenges with that, and it was an interesting, complex challenge, because even though we had moved to Office 365, we still had a segment of our population that was still on an on-prem Exchange server. And because of that segment being on the on-prem Exchange server, it now made accessing email in the cloud impossible for the folks who had already moved to the cloud. So here it is, we had invested in moving folks to the cloud so that we would have this business continuity. And because that segment of the population was still on-prem, it was an all or nothing. So we still didn't have it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. That was challenging. And like I said, it took us over a week before we got that up. And I will take a moment here to point out that part of the delay in getting that up and running was not having a vendor on retainer that we could call and get. I mean, we had to get a contract. We had to get it through legal. And even though it was emergency, it still took us about 2 or 3 days to get those approvals in place. So that's one lesson that I learned.
Yeah.
Build those partnerships ahead of time. Have those folks that you can call in the event of emergency. Make sure they're already through your procurement and legal, and you have those purchasing vehicles in place. So when you need them, you're not standing there trying to get your attorney to look through it with 5 other directors that are doing the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, lawyers, right? You don't have to answer that. So, yeah, and you were telling me when we were chatting before the show that you had like 5 different data centers, correct? That you were in the process of consolidating. So
yep.
It's almost like you found a silver lining out of this event, because now you could accelerate that consolidation because you already had some damage. Was it damaged systems or just systems that weren't online?
Oh, the systems were fine. Yeah. They just had a hard shutdown, and there were some where we wondered whether they would come up or not. But to be honest with you, I've heard someone say it, never let a good crisis go to waste, because throughout this crisis, we didn't have to worry about establishing a maintenance window because everything was already down.
Yeah.
So we literally evacuated that entire data center probably within about 4 to 5 days. We still had a few pieces that were left behind, like the Halon system and some of the UPS and batteries and stuff like that. But as far as servers and systems and storage, within 48 hours, we were able to move everything out. And here's another reason why we were able to do that in such a short amount of time. We had already had the space at our offsite data center as well as our AOC.
Yep.
Right. So we were already building that space for that 3-year plan. So the racks were there, the power was there, the cooling was there. So it was just a matter. Initially, we wanted to try to do it virtually, but we tried and that didn't work. So we literally had to physically, everything was already shut down, take them out of the racks. And this is a 6th floor data center now. And mind you, for the first 2 days, we didn't have an elevator because there was no power in the building.
Right.
And this is, again, back to that partnership. We were able to partner with a local vendor who specializes in moving data centers. And we got, because it was an emergency, we got the contract signed and approved. And let's see, the storms happened on Wednesday. By Saturday, we had people on site physically moving servers and printers out of the data center into our emergency operations center. And probably within maybe about a week or two, we probably restored about 78 to 80% of all of our systems.
Okay. So, like how long did it take before you felt like you were back out of crisis mode and back to quote unquote normal?
Well, that's kind of hard to answer because even though we got the data center up and running and we got services restored, we had people that were displaced. So we were still looking for places to house people, we had to hold our commission meeting at the Broward Center for the Performing Arts because legally we have to have open meetings.
Yeah.
We had to move our PEG channel. We had to rent a van for some of the AV equipment because that has to be publicized.
Yep.
So we had to rent storage. And our folks were going in at 6 a.m. to offload the equipment, set it up at these different locations because we couldn't leave our equipment there because we were only borrowing the space. So from a systems restoration standpoint, I would say a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. But as far as not being in emergency mode, several months, and I would say we still are in somewhat of an emergency mode because we don't have a permanent home for our commission. We just signed two leases for a building to house our commission meetings. but we still have to get everything set up.
Yep.
You know, and then now in the middle of all of this, right?
Are you going to throw something else at me now?
I'm going to throw something else at you now. We were scheduled to build the new police headquarters. We broke ground on our police headquarters back in June. They started building, and the idea was to stay in the old police headquarters until the new police headquarters was built, a 2-year period. And the compactions started vibrating the existing building, and there was a concern about employee health. So we had an emergency evacuation of our police headquarters while we were still recovering from the BD. So needless to say, we've kind of been in crisis mode for the past.
Okay, so I guess the answer is that we're now 6 months in, and you're still, you know, seeing ripple effects, I guess, of this event. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, but what is also fair to say is that that data center consolidation, it's probably going to happen before the end of this year.
And so originally, when was that supposed to be finished? After the 3 years?
We were looking at probably 2 to 3 year process, because we knew that we were going to be moving out of the PDHQ, because that was our other critical site. But the new building wasn't scheduled to be built until 2025. So eliminating that data center was probably not going to come until 2025. Well, now that we've gotten, the direction to immediately evacuate that building, we are migrating servers and systems as we speak. We've already evacuated the city hall. So we had 5 data centers. We had Public Works, City Hall, Police Department, our EOC, and our offsite data center. Well, probably by the end of this year, we will have eliminated 3 of them. And that was the goal, to consolidate it down to those 2. So a little help of Mother Nature and some compaction. So now here's the other thing that this whole ordeal has allowed us to do. Because of all the moving, because of all the displacement, because of all of the hybrid now and the mobility that folks have to that's part of their life now. Yeah. We now have folks that are ready to digitize, paperwork and stuff that they didn't want to change. They didn't want to move. We now have folks that are ready to go to the cloud. We now have folks partnering with us to help upgrade technologies that we've been, having challenges, if you will, with, that you broke, don't fix it mentality that sometimes is prevalent in local government. And really the rate that we are modernizing and moving forward is something I could not have even dreamed of in my wildest dreams. Yeah. And so you had that that original 3-year plan. Do you now look at that and go, do you just kind of toss that out the window, or do you revise it and do you just look at it and go, okay, we've already done this, this, and this, and now, we're going to rewrite it to do these things in case we get another one of these events? No, because when I did the 3-year plan, I specifically didn't put time frames in there. Okay. I put phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But in my mind, I'm thinking phase 1 is going to take at least a year. Phase 2 is going to take at least a year. Phase 3. But you didn't tell anybody you didn't tell anybody the actual dates. Very smart. I just said phases. Yep. So phase 1, we've been able to get done a lot of the things that I wasn't expecting to get done for at least another year or so. We've also been able to, we were able to help build a business case for doing a business impact analysis. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the culture that all of these technologies belong to IT. They don't. They belong to the business. And IT does not make business decisions. IT and technology is an enabler of the decisions that are made by the business leaders. So the good that has come out of this is people have seen how technology is such a part of their organizational outcomes and missions. Not that they didn't see it before, but I think it's just more poignant, if you will. Yeah. And now they have more or they feel like there's more skin in the game and being involved in these technology conversations. In the past, we're an afterthought and they don't call us until things are broken. Well, now we have the opportunity to say, we're your partners. And if we're a partner, we want to move from being break, fix, utility to being strategic partners with you at the decision-making table, defining what that roadmap, what that strategy should be. So that's really what's happening, and probably a lot less time than I was expecting.
Okay, and you already mentioned a few lessons that you learned from this. Obviously, the Gmail thing was one lesson. What other lessons did you learn being a CIO in a situation like this?
Well, I would say, that old saying, prevention is cheaper than cure.
Yep.
There are many opportunities to be proactive about things. And sometimes our world is a dark hole and people don't really understand it until they feel it, until there's a ransomware attack. They don't want to give you $1 million to beef up your cybersecurity program. And until, we've lost City Hall and now people realize, I've actually had directors say, well, we don't really rely on IT. We're self-sufficient. Well, you know what? Not so much. So building, and my goal was to build what I'm calling a technology committee and establishing business relationship managers within the IT department that meet with these businesses on a regular basis. And let's not only have a conversation when there's a crisis, let's build a relationship, let's build a cadence so we already are aware of each other's challenges, our needs, our outcomes, and so forth. And then we can skip all of that when there is a crisis and get working towards a solution at a much quicker pace.
Yep. And as a leader of other people on your team, were you able to learn anything from this experience as a leader? I wouldn't say did you enjoy this experience, but what did you learn? Did you learn anything more about yourself in the way that you lead?
I did.
Yeah.
Not initially, but after a while. And I'll tell you this, dealing with a crisis, I've been in crisis before. I've been in a ransomware attack. I've been, in critical outages. So that wasn't a surprise and that wasn't a problem. What I have not experienced is the longevity of it.
Okay.
You have a crisis and a couple of days, you're back to normal. This has gone on for months, and the exhaustion and the burnout and trying to keep people motivated while we're dealing with this, some folks who live in Fort Lauderdale on my team had flooding of the deal with themselves.
Right.
Who had family members that had to deal with it themselves. So the length of it, I would say that I underestimated the longevity and the toll that being in disaster crisis mode for an extended amount of time can take on you and your team. Okay.
And I forgot to mention this in the beginning of the show, but this event, even, it was historic and there was a lot of rain and flooding. There were no major casualties, right? This was one of those things where you didn't have a lot of loss of life at all, if at any, right?
No, we're very proud of that. We had no loss of life. Like I shared earlier, we had over 600 rescues. And because, even though our email failed, because we mobilized quickly, I give credit to our leadership for seeing the water rising and immediately activating the Emergency Operations Center, coordinating with local agencies. We even got, I forgot to tell you about this. So Port Everglades is where a large part of our fuel comes in. Well, the flooding clogged, I think there were 12 fuel pumps and only 2 of them were available. So even though we didn't have a gas shortage, we had a gas shortage in the middle of this because the gas couldn't get from the port to the gas stations. Yeah. So our state had to send down trucks with gasoline because that became a crisis. So now you had people, lining up at gas stations. So it was interesting how all these different pieces come to play. And I've never had this challenge. I just gifted. I'm a people person, but I would say for other CIOs, building those relationships with other people in your community and local government, really it comes in handy. It really is special when those relationships are already made and you call in a favor and everybody just comes together for one mission. That's protect life and property.
Right. So hopefully over the next year and a half for this 3-year plan, nothing else will go wrong. Hopefully, right?
Hopefully.
But it sounds like if you guys do experience this again, that you'll at least be ready for almost anything then, right?
Yeah, well, I went one of the days when it was just everything was really getting to me. I called one of my mentors and he said to me, he says, listen, you know, hardship, you know, you don't determine how good or great someone's character is when things are easy. When things are difficult, that's when you determine someone's character.
Yep.
And the leadership and the moving forward, yes, we're kind of exhausted and we're a little burnt out. But the team coming together, even the team, they said they saw collaboration that they never saw before. We established daily meetings. We were checking on each other. Can you do this? Yes, I can do that. I mean, even our admins were bringing water, bringing lunch, because we had engineers who were working straight hours. And really, unfortunately, sometimes, you know, that's what it takes. But we're capitalizing on that momentum.
Yep.
And we're using it to move the organization forward.
Okay. And did you learn anything? Did you have to change anything regarding your disaster backup recovery plans at all based on this? And, or, you know, you're just,
it's kind of hard to answer that because we were in the process of changing it. We were in the process of modernizing our backup and disaster recovery strategy. As a matter of fact, I believe we have one more task to do, and we will have closed out that project because that was a fiscal year 23 project. We had two different systems, and we had folks doing things one way here, folks doing things something differently over there. We've upgraded, we standardized, and we're now building a new tenant in Microsoft Azure so that we can leverage the replication to blob storage, which is going to cost us less money over time because we're not having to maintain on-site, on-prem hardware and maintenance. Right.
Okay. Tamika, like, it sounds like you deserve a break from all of this stuff. And again, I appreciate that you know, you gave us this rundown of the events here. You know, I guess I could say, you know, I don't want you to have any more experiences, but sometimes even a little disaster can help bring a team together, right?
Yes, and not just a team, but an organization.
Yeah,
because you know, let's be honest. Sometimes there is a disconnect between IT and the business units.
Yeah,
and we're leveraging this opportunity to say we're in this together. This is a partnership. You know, you tell us what you need, and we bring the technology in to enable it. But we need that partnership. It can't be, you know, oh, that's an IT thing. And the same thing with cybersecurity. I mean, we had an incident a couple of weeks ago. You can probably look that up in the paper where we were a victim of a phishing scam. We sent $1.2 billion to a bad actor.
Oh boy.
So again, if that doesn't matter how beefy your firewalls and your security programs are, really it's an organization responsibility for protecting our data. And outside of human capital, that's one of the organization's most important assets.
All right, Tamika, thanks for joining us on the show today. It was some interesting stuff that was going on.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any comments that you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.